I'm going to marry your sister. ATM is no longer needed. I could hear the mocking laughter over the phone. But I didn't let out a surprised sound. I thought if I played into their hands, it would weaken my position. And by now, I had not an iota of love left for my husband, Zach. Okay, brace yourself. I replied calmly, but inside, anger was boiling over. Zach, who dumped all the childcare, elder care, and housework on me, was enjoying an affair with my sister, Nicole. And Nicole too, after borrowing all that money from me, she slept with my husband and even called me an ATM at the end. It was unforgivable. You're okay with us divorcing, right? When Zach pressed me, I simply nodded yes. On the other end of the phone, the two of them cheered. Enjoy it while you can. There's no way they won't get their comeuppance for belittling me like this. I bit my lip hard. My name is Maggie. I'm 60 years old, living with my husband Zach, who's 5 years my senior. Our son, Alan, is 30 this year, already independent and out of the house. I was working part-time at a grocery store until recently, but due to the recent surge in prices, I was forced into early retirement for cost-cutting. The manager, who was very kind since I worked there for many years, even gave me a severance package despite being part-time. It's a bit sad to retire before reaching the age of retirement, but working at the grocery store definitely helped me grow. So I'm very grateful to the manager who continued to employ me. One might think I'm set for a slow life in retirement, but actually, I'm having some domestic issues. Well, more with Zach than with the household. With our loveless and distant marriage, I'm very anxious about living together for many more years. Why did it come to this? Let me start from the beginning. I met Zach over 40 years ago. Back then, I was a student job hunting, talking to various industry veterans. Most of them were seniors from the newspaper club I was part of. At a club drinking party, many alumni, including Zach, would show up. Maggie, what kind of company do you want to work for? Zach, rumored to be the handsome senior in the club, asked me with a comfortable distance. I honestly told him I wanted to work for a stable company. How about the bank I work at? Banking's probably the most stable, right? Indeed, it seems like a solid job. While my response was cliché, I was happy Zach invited me to his bank. Encouraged by Zach, I applied to his bank and got the job. It wasn't too difficult as the bank hired many students from my university. Once I started working at the bank, I realized many women liked him. Zach, always invited out for meals after work, seemed out of reach for me. But Zach often asked me out, and despite feeling guilty towards his other admirers, I started going out with him more as I was interested. So, we started dating and got married 3 years later, after which I quit the bank. It's regretful to quit just after 4 years, but back then, most women quit upon marriage. Especially since Zach and I were in the same workplace, he seemed to prefer I work part-time elsewhere. I had no regrets about marrying Zach and quitting my job. For a while, we enjoyed our life together until I got pregnant and gave birth to our son, Alan, at 30. Zach, who used to treat me like a princess, suddenly became indifferent after the birth. Zach, can you make a bottle for Alan? A bottle? That's a mom's job. Why do I have to do it? His sudden change in attitude left me more in shock rather than in sadness or anger. I had heard that men sometimes lose interest when their wives give birth. But I thought that was a story for only a small fraction of couples. I never imagined that Zach, who loved me so much, would suddenly cast me aside like throwing something into the open sea after I had our child. From then on, every day was a whirlwind. Zach continued to refuse to help with the baby. Taking care of the baby is a mom's job. Plus, you're a housewife, so it's natural for you to take care of it. I'm busy with work. Zach had his plausible reasons, but they didn't satisfy me. But it's my first time too, and raising the baby alone is hard work. As I countered while watching Zach's reaction, he glared at me. If it's that hard, why don't you go to my dad's? Dad's free and can help you out. To your father? Yeah, that's right. I was utterly shocked by Zach's suggestion. Zach's mom had passed away early, and only his dad, Bob, was left, who recently had trouble with his legs and might need to go to a care facility. How could he think of leaving our child with Bob? Moreover, Zach completely refused to be involved with the baby, essentially just dumping it on his parents. Zach's outlandish idea left me troubled. Since then, I received little help from Zach in raising Alan, and I had to do it alone, repeatedly reading childcare books. Fortunately, Alan was a well-behaved and obedient child who listened to me and grew up healthy. When Alan turned 5, after sending him off to kindergarten, I noticed a call on my mobile phone. "Maggie, it looks like Dad collapsed. I'm thinking of putting him in a facility. Can you handle the paperwork?" "What? Collapsed? Is he okay? And about the facility?" I was very surprised by Zach's call. The news of Bob's collapse was alarming. I hoped he had been taken to the hospital in time. Given Bob's leg condition, it must have been quite a struggle. Bob had always been fond of me, treating me like his own daughter, and I regularly took Alan to visit him, even without Zach asking. The in-laws' house was about a 40-minute drive from our home. Every time we visited, "Thank you for coming all this way," Bob would say with a kind smile. Alan and I both loved Bob and, despite the distance, always wanted to visit him again and again. Hearing that Bob had collapsed, I was filled with anxiety, but Zach only mentioned putting him in a facility in a matter-of-fact tone, which irritated me. "Just handle it, I'm busy with work, okay?" "Wait a minute." Zach cut the call quickly after saying his piece. The idea of putting Bob in a facility was unthinkable to me. Unless it was Bob's own wish, it seemed like Zach was just deciding to put him in a facility on his own. After much thought, I decided to take care of Bob myself as soon as he recovered. When I arrived at the hospital where Bob had been sent, he was in the hospital room and had already regained his consciousness. Bob was over 70 but had struggled to continue the family's farming business despite his leg issues. Both Zach and I had asked Bob to rest, but he insisted on going to the field that day. "Maggie, sorry for troubling you." "No, please, just don't strain yourself anymore." "All right." It seemed Bob had learned his lesson this time and stopped going to the field after being discharged. Bob's field was no longer used for crops, leaving only an empty land. Though it could be revived with care, the land would probably be passed on to Zach, his only son, who I doubted would take up farming. I felt sorry for the neglected field but thought it was for the best if it meant Bob wouldn't strain himself further. After that, I started caring for Bob, visiting the in-laws' house about 3 times a week. I also began working part-time at the grocery store around that time, juggling work, childcare, caregiving, and household chores. For childcare, I switched Alan from kindergarten to daycare with extended hours, managing to make time. I worked 4 mornings a week till after lunch and then went to the in-laws' house. After caring for Bob, I would pick up Alan from daycare, go home, and make dinner. It was very challenging initially due to inexperience. Though it became slightly easier as I got used to it, I didn't realize how tired I was becoming. I had no time to talk to Zach and was overwhelmed just dealing with the tasks at hand. 10 years passed in this manner, and I turned 45, Zach 50. By then, Alan had become a teenager and often rebelled against me. But I saw this as a sign of his growing independence and, while feeling a bit lonely, I was happy about his growth. However, Alan never showed any defiance towards Zach. In fact, he hardly ever spoke to him. Zach had abandoned any childcare responsibilities from Alan's birth, leaving everything to me, so it seemed Alan didn't really think of Zach as his dad. It was around this time that our loveless and distant family relationship reached a critical point. The catalyst was a call from my sister, Nicole. "Hi, Maggie. I just got back from a trip to Hawaii with friends and I've got some souvenirs for you. Can I drop by your place?" Nicole, my elder sister by 3 years, has always been reckless with money and had a fiery temperament, making us quite incompatible. She always wore flashy makeup and was more beautiful than me. I was suspicious of her intention to give me souvenirs but couldn't refuse her kind gesture and agreed. When Nicole came over the weekend, she handed me the souvenirs, which I realized were not from Hawaii and were clearly common sweets available locally. I chose to stay silent, thinking that pointing this out would only upset her. "Hey, Maggie. I'm short on cash this month. Can you lend me some money?" Suddenly visiting with a fake souvenir and now this, I wondered what she was up to. "Lend you money? Why?" I suspected it was just Nicole's usual spending habits leaving her broke. "Well, I've been feeling unwell lately. The doctor said I might need to be hospitalized. But I don't have insurance and can't afford the hospital and treatment costs." Nicole, sounding feeble, left me speechless. What kind of illness required hospitalization? I silently stared at Nicole, who looked at me pleadingly. "Okay. Just pay me back after your treatment." "Thanks. Sisters are the best." Nicole's face lit up as she shook my hand. Despite our differences, she was my sister and I wanted her to get well soon if she was ill. "By the way, when is Zach getting back?" Once Nicole knew I'd lend her the money, she casually asked this. "Zach just went to the grocery store." "Oh, I see. I'll just say hi then and leave." Right then, the front door opened and Zach returned. "Hey, Zach." "Oh, Nicole. You're here." "Yes, just had something to discuss with Maggie. But I'm done now and will be leaving." As Nicole stood up and passed by Zach, she seemed to whisper something in his ear. After Nicole left, "What did Nicole say to you earlier?" I asked, but "Nothing important." Zach evaded the question. I remained curious but soon forgot about it. The discovery of Zach and Nicole's affair happened a month later. I planned to visit Bob that day, but work got extended, so I postponed my visit to the in-laws' house to the next day and went home as usual. Alan was at the library, so only Zach should have been home. "Why are there women's shoes here?" As I took off my shoes at the entrance, I noticed a familiar pair of heels. They were the high heels Nicole wore over the weekend. Entering the house, the living room was empty, which relieved me momentarily. But then, from the bedroom, I heard faint, indiscreet voices of Zach and Nicole. "What are they doing?" I considered confronting them right then but hesitated at the last moment. What if Zach demands a divorce after being exposed? Alan wouldn't want to live with Zach. But I wasn't confident I could afford Alan's education fees alone. If we were to divorce, I wanted to wait until Alan had graduated from college. Frustrated, I decided to leave the house, pretending I saw nothing. Instead, I gathered evidence of the affair, taking photos of their traces and secretly saving the exchanges between Zach and Nicole from his mobile phone. It appeared they had been having an affair for about 6 months. Despite the anger boiling inside me, I reminded myself it was for Alan and endured, not exposing the affair. Another 15 years have passed since then, and Alan is now part of the working world. After graduating from college and leaving his first job early, Alan set up his own business and is now working hard as its president. And as the story goes, I had retired from the grocery store, but I was working a little at Alan's company. I had been giving Nicole money for her treatment bit by bit, but when her requests became too persistent, I grew reluctant to lend more and started ignoring her calls. In fact, the signs of Nicole and Zach's affair had disappeared about a year after it came to light. Zach probably got bored of Nicole. He changed his mind and chose to stay married to me. Knowing this, I couldn't bring myself to pursue the matter of the affair anymore and decided to pretend it never happened. But I realized my naivety when I heard about Bob's death. I got the news about Bob from Zach during the day. Bob had lived a long life until 95, but I was deeply shocked by the loss of Bob, who I had cared for so long. Bob, unlike Zach, was kind and considerate, so his passing felt like losing my own parent. Yet even then, Zach said, "Dad seems to have accumulated a lot of wealth, so that's exciting." Laughing. I was so angry that I thought of giving Zach a piece of my mind, but then I heard a woman's laughter from nearby. Oops, did she realize we're together? I was chilled to the bone at the sound of Nicole's voice. Had Nicole and Zach's relationship not ended after all? For 15 years, they had continued their affair without my knowledge. Realizing this, they seemed like an incomprehensible entity to me. I'm going to marry your sister. ATM is no longer needed. I could hear the mocking laughter over the phone. But I didn't let out a sound of surprise. I thought if I played into their hands, it would weaken my position, and by now, I had not an iota of love left for Zach. Okay, brace yourself. I replied calmly, but inside, anger was boiling over. Zach, who dumped all the childcare, elder care, and housework on me, was enjoying an affair with Nicole. And Nicole too, after borrowing all that money from me, she slept with my husband and even called me an ATM at the end. It was unforgivable. You're okay with us divorcing, right? When Zach pressed me, I simply nodded yes. On the other end of the phone, the two of them cheered. Enjoy it while you can. There's no way they won't get their comeuppance for belittling me like this. I bit my lip hard. After Bob's funeral, I filed for divorce as promised. When I informed Zach, he seemed so delighted that it felt like he was doing it on purpose. Now that we're divorced, you should leave this house as soon as possible. Me leave? I asked, surprised, and Zach nodded as if it were obvious. I'm going to live with Nicole, and you'll be living alone. This house is too big for one person. Anger turned to disbelief, and I said, okay. Too weary to argue, and agreed to Zach's demands. Though upset, I had already considered my living situation before the divorce. Leaving our home, I headed to Alan's, who was living independently. I had contacted Alan beforehand, and he welcomed his mom, who had just left Zach, with open arms. He's truly a kind son. I resolved to work even harder at Alan's company. A few days later, a man claiming to be a lawyer contacted me. When I went to the specified location, Zach, Nicole, and the lawyer were seated. I am in possession of a will left by Zach's dad, the lawyer said, and took out the will signed by Bob from his bag. I was surprised as I didn't know Bob had left a will. As Zach's only child, he was the legal heir to Bob's assets. Being no longer Zach's wife, I had no claim to any inheritance. Why was I called then? As I wondered, the lawyer read the will. Its contents were astounding. Bob had left half of his assets to me. That meant the field Bob owned was now part of my estate. While Zach would inherit the other half due to his legal share, he had surely not expected me to inherit anything. Why does Maggie get half of the inheritance? I'm his only son, I should receive it all. Dad was very grateful to Maggie for her selfless care, even though they were not related by blood. He meant it as a thank you. Bob. I was deeply moved by Bob's thoughtfulness. What the heck is this? I thought we could finally relax with the inheritance. Nicole twisted her face in frustration. The lawyer then mentioned that Bob's will had also left all of his debts to Zach, but it seemed Zach and Nicole were too upset to hear that part. I was overwhelmed with gratitude towards Bob, and before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. Thank you, Bob. Seeing me in tears, the two of them seemed to grow even angrier, but the lawyer concluded. That is the content of the will. With that, Zach and Nicole seemed to snap back to reality. I'm not happy about losing half, but hey, we still have half of the inheritance left. Gotta thank the law for that. Zach said as he patted Nicole's shoulder, who nodded in agreement, right. Well, we'll be leaving now. We won't have anything to do with you anymore, so take care. They laughed loudly as they left. I returned to Alan's house, savoring Bob's last act of kindness. After receiving the inheritance from Bob, I continued working at Alan's place without incident, and before I knew it, 2 months had passed. That's when Zach called me, on a Sunday. Alan and I were both off work, relaxing at home, but my mobile phone started ringing insistently. Zach! The air froze between me and Alan as we realized it was Zach calling. Why is Dad calling? He abandoned you, and now what does he want? You don't have to answer. Alan said so, but the phone kept ringing persistently. Irritated, I decided to answer to silence Zach. What is it, calling me repeatedly? You said we wouldn't have anything to do with each other ever again. I answered with a tone of annoyance, but Zach seemed not to hear me and started talking frantically. Hey, what's going on? Why are you working at Alan's company? And why is Alan's company being featured on TV? And what's with showing your fancy house? Zach's near hysterical voice echoed through the phone, causing Alan to frown. You saw the TV. I realized why Zach was calling all of a sudden. Recently, a TV station had interviewed Zach's gym, and it was broadcast yesterday. Alan's gym, which combines a gym and cafe, had caught the TV station's interest due to its novelty. Since opening, the gym had rapidly increased its membership, and Alan appeared on TV as a successful young entrepreneur, even showcasing our home as Zach mentioned. The house we live in now, Alan's home, is quite luxurious, far surpassing the neighboring houses in size. So Zach saw Alan's house and was shocked enough to call. What do you mean you guys are living in such a big house? Over here, Nicole used up all of Dad's inheritance, and I even got left with his debts. Damn it, I didn't hear about that from the lawyer back then. Zach yelled angrily over the phone. But back then, the lawyer did mention that Bob had left all his debts to Zach. It wasn't my fault that Zach had not listened, and it was none of my business. It's none of my business, Zach. The lawyer clearly mentioned it, and it's your responsibility for not paying attention. Besides, you knew about Nicole's spending habits even before marrying her, right? I gave her money for treatment and haven't been repaid yet. This just proves to me that you and Nicole are the worst kind of people, quick to betray someone you should trust. In response to my correct argument, Zach remained silent, unable to say anything. Besides, isn't it all your fault for cheating on me in the first place? I just don't understand why I have to be blamed. I let out my pent-up frustrations, feeling somewhat relieved. Realizing he couldn't blame me, Zach suddenly changed his tone to a pleading one. Please, Maggie. I'm begging you, lend me some money. I was supposed to get a retirement fund this year, but I got fired, and all I'm left with are Dad's debts. Nicole left after we argued about money. How am I supposed to live now? You're my only hope. I admit I was wrong about everything. I apologize. Just give me a little bit of Dad's inheritance. You're living a good life with Alan, right? Think of it as helping someone out, okay? His nerve to beg his ex-wife for money after cheating and leaving her was beyond comprehension. Alan, who had been listening to the conversation, looked at me, seemingly wanting to say something. I handed my mobile phone to Alan. Alan turned on the speaker and firmly said to Zach, Dad, you betrayed Mom and married Nicole, right? And I heard you never took care of me since I was born. I don't have any memories of playing with you after I became aware. It was always just Mom and me. On Parents' Day and Sports Day, it was always just Mom who came. That's why I'm helping Mom with my company and living with her. Why should I, who you never did anything for, lend you money? My only parent is Mom. I won't give you a single dollar. Alan's strong, businesslike tone choked me up. I could sense Zach gasping on the other end of the phone. Alan, how could you say that to your dad? Fine, I won't rely on you guys ever again. Don't insult me. With that, Zach hung up. We looked at the silent mobile phone and then burst out laughing together. Zach begged us for money, and now he says he won't have anything to do with us. What an idiot. Yeah. Dad has always been like that, getting angry without thinking ahead. As we discussed Zach's foolishness, the phone rang again. It was Zach. He probably wanted to ask for money, despite saying he wouldn't contact us again. Fed up, I blocked Zach's contact. That's it. Now that fool can't bother us anymore. Yeah. Thanks, Mom. His gratitude for being raised seemed implicit. I should be the one thanking you. You've given me such a great life. No matter how old you get, you're still my precious son. We reaffirmed our bond as mother and son, grateful for each other's presence in our spacious home. A few days later, my sister Nicole called me. Her request was almost identical to what Zach had said. I couldn't fathom lending more money to Nicole, who hadn't even repaid what she owed me. In fact, I hadn't yet demanded compensation for her affair with Zach, so I successfully sued both of them for damages through a lawyer. They ended up getting divorced after being married. Their marriage only lasted for 2 months. Zach was even worse off than Nicole. The negative inheritance he received from Dad was too substantial. Bob had borrowed a lot of money for farming, managing it all by himself. I hadn't known about it. While caring for Bob, he often complained about Zach. Bob was able to forgive Zach for not taking over the farming business, but the fact that he didn't take care of Alan and not visit his own father was unforgivable. He was also furious with the way Zach treated me, and I always tried to soothe him, saying it was okay. If kind Bob was that angry, Zach must have been quite a negligent son. All of Zach's expected retirement funds were gone due to his dismissal for misconduct. Rumor has it he even tried to embezzle money from his bank to pay off his debts. Had he just worked quietly until the end, he would have received his retirement money. His greed was his downfall. Now, while receiving a pension, he seems to be working 3 part-time jobs to pay off his debts. Starting a new job at 65 and being taught by younger people as a newcomer must be shattering his pride. Although he has worked as a bank employee for many years, his part-time job as a new employee involves a lot of odd jobs. A hard adjustment for someone who never did housework, childcare, or elder care. He'll likely give up soon enough. For Zach, who neglected his son and cheated with Nicole for years, it's a fitting punishment. I hope he manages until the end. As for me, I'm still working energetically at Alan's workplace. The staff, who are around my child's age, treat me very kindly. Our workplace is always full of smiles, attracting many customers. Alan recently got engaged to a girl a year younger than him and introduced her to me. She's a wonderful, sensible young lady. Well respected at work. I was planning to move out when they married, but she insisted we live together. I'm grateful for her kindness and looking forward to our future together. Once I nearly died, and now that I've managed to recover, I feel reborn. I'm starting a new life, and I don't want to take care of some old hag. He said coldly, despite Victor's recovery from his illness being a direct result of me becoming a donor. Looking back, I had never received a single word of gratitude from Victor. In the divorce papers mercilessly handed to me, Victor's signature was already there. Yet, I wasn't shocked, just irritated and anxious. Since he regained his mobility, Victor had been gallivanting around, and I had been harboring suspicions for some time. And now, I had fallen ill. I had stomach cancer. It was progressing slowly, so it was not critical, but I still had to start treatment with surgery and chemotherapy. Full of anxiety, I never imagined being pushed away like this. All my love and trust for Victor vanished in an instant. The hard part is, to Layla, he's undeniably her only dad. I felt guilty about becoming a single parent, but I just didn't have the energy to try and mend things with Victor now that my own battle with illness is beginning. I signed the divorce papers Victor brought and returned them to him. A month later, Victor, having left numerous unanswered calls, finally barged into my hospital room and blurted out something shocking. My name is Karina, a 29-year-old housewife. I had been happily living with Victor, a year my senior, and our 5-year-old daughter Layla for 7 years. Even after getting married, I continued working full-time until I went on maternity leave and then resigned from my job. I wanted to take my time raising Layla, but with the recession and Victor's salary alone not being enough, I had to return to work as soon as Layla could go to daycare. I got a job at an apparel company run by Victor's sister-in-law, Madison. They were looking for an office worker, and my previous experience made me a quick hire. Despite being family, I wasn't coddled, and the workplace was great with many colleagues who also had kids, making it easy to discuss childcare and take leave for emergencies. However, juggling work, household chores, and parenting was incredibly challenging. In the mornings, I prepared breakfast for Victor and Layla, made lunch for Victor, sent him off, dropped Layla at daycare, then headed to work. After work, I picked up Layla, shopped, cleaned, bathed Layla, and prepared dinner. Victor returned home just as Layla finished eating, and I prepared his meal while putting Layla to bed. Despite the hectic days, Victor wasn't very cooperative with housework or childcare. Even when Layla had a fever and I was busy caring for her, he'd casually ask, "Where's my breakfast?" If I asked him to shop for dinner because I had to work late, he'd complain, "I'm tired from work." Exhausted myself, I didn't have the energy to argue and ended up handling everything alone. Everything changed abruptly. Victor failed some tests at a company health check and was strongly advised to undergo further tests. He didn't want to since he felt fine, but started noticing odd symptoms like unexplained bruises and bleeding gums when brushing teeth. Ignoring it could lead to something serious. Considering Layla's future, I insisted on a thorough examination for Victor, which revealed he had leukemia.
"Why me?"
Victor was shocked, hearing the familiar name of the disease. But leukemia isn't incurable anymore. There are many cases of remission through chemotherapy and bone marrow transplants, and many patients return to normal life. I decided to support Victor, who was on the verge of despair, and accompany him through his treatment. He took a leave from work and was admitted to the hospital immediately. As for me, I had to juggle work, household chores, childcare, and now Victor's treatment. It was me who reached the limit first. The stress of hospitalization made Victor even more irritable towards me. I knew it was just him lashing out, but being busy with work, looking after Layla, doing household chores, and visiting the hospital in my spare time, I was honestly exhausted. It was then Madison, my sister-in-law, reached out to me. "Why don't you live with me? I can help with the household and taking care of Layla." Madison, the president of our company, was always on the front line of sales. She never left everything to her subordinates and always tried to catch the voices from the field. That's why her staff felt close to her and found it easy to exchange opinions. Knowing how busy she was, I felt guilty. "But Madison, you're busy too. If you collapse now, the one who suffers the most will be Layla, right? I'll help as much as I can with Victor's support. Rely on others when you can." Madison's firm words made me break down in tears. I was anxious about Victor, Layla's future, and my health, and Madison's presence and words were a great relief. Victor's parents had already passed away, and Madison lived alone in her parents' house. "It's too big for one person. I didn't want to sell it because of the memories with my parents, but I'm glad you two are here." Madison warmly welcomed me and Layla. Living with her was very comfortable. Our good relationship made it feel like I got a sister. Madison, who had been living alone for a long time, was good at household chores. Her active help made life easier than before. Then, there was a hope in Victor's treatment. I was a match as a bone marrow donor for him. After Victor's diagnosis, both Madison and I tested for bone marrow donation. The odds of finding a match are 1 in 4 for siblings, and 1 in several hundred to several thousand for unrelated individuals. We despaired when Madison wasn't a match, but I was, and Victor was overjoyed. I had to be hospitalized for a few days for the bone marrow extraction. During that time, of course, I had to take time off from work, and I couldn't take care of Layla. Both of these troubled Madison, but she didn't show any disgust. "I'm really grateful you're doing this for my brother. I'll take care of everything, so don't worry about anything but your own health," she said. With Madison's support, I underwent the surgery to donate bone marrow to Victor. He had to stay in a sterile room for a while post-surgery to avoid infections. I was discharged after a few days and, thanks to Madison's generosity, took a couple more days off before returning to work. The hematopoietic stem cells transplanted into Victor began to work properly, and after a few weeks, he was able to move to the general ward. When I took Layla to visit Victor in the general ward, a nurse was in the room. Seeing Layla after a long time, Victor smiled happily. Victor is recovering well. He's young and strong, so he should be able to return to society soon if he continues to progress well. Thank you so much for everything. After expressing our gratitude, the nurse smiled and left the room. True to her words, Victor's condition stabilized, and a few months later, he was discharged. He still needed to rest at home for a while, so the four of us, including Madison, began living together at the in-laws' house. I once again took on the responsibilities of work, house chores, childcare, and caring for Victor, but it was less burdensome than before, thanks to Madison's presence. Madison, who can speak her mind clearly to Victor, told him,
You don't have to overdo it, but try doing some household chores as a part of your rehabilitation.
Reluctantly, Victor began to help around the house. However, knowing his physical condition, I often ended up helping him, and eventually, Victor seemed to understand that if he did things slowly, I would come to help him, and he stopped doing even what he could. I still feel tired. He said it as an excuse, not even trying to get up from the sofa. Once, when a delivery arrived while I was preparing dinner and I couldn't answer the door, I asked him to do it, only to receive a heavy sigh and a complaint. You're rough with people, even though I'm supposed to be resting. I couldn't help but think, it's just this much. But Victor's pain was something only he could understand. So, believing his words, I tried to do as much as I could, even if it meant pushing myself. Perhaps because of overexerting myself again, my health had been deteriorating recently. Eating had become more difficult, and Madison even worried that I might have lost weight. By this time, Victor had recovered almost completely and had returned to work. Even though Victor no longer needed care, it didn't mean that household chores and childcare decreased. Even as my health worsened, Victor, perhaps reacting to having been told to rest, began going out alone more on his days off. He seemed not to notice my poor health and continued to neglect household chores. Once, when I asked where he was going and with whom, he became angry, saying, I have my own private life too. Eventually, due to stress, I started experiencing painful stomach cramps and, encouraged by Madison, decided to undergo a medical checkup. With Victor having been seriously ill, I thought it was best to take early action for Layla's sake. The result was that I was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Fortunately, it seemed to be progressing slowly, but I still needed to be hospitalized for a while and undergo harsh chemotherapy. Layla looked anxious about my sudden hospitalization, but Victor was out and didn't stay by her side. Instead, Madison was with her. To not get in the way of my preparation for hospitalization, Madison took Layla out shopping. While I was silently getting ready, Victor came back. What's this, going on a trip? Victor asked nonchalantly. I snapped back, unable to contain my anger. I have stomach cancer. Stomach cancer. I've been feeling sick lately. I went for a checkup today, and that was the diagnosis. I need to be hospitalized. Hospitalized. What about the housework? Will Madison handle it? I was stunned that his first reaction to hearing about my hospitalization was not a concern for me. Indeed, the slow progression of my illness meant it wasn't a matter of immediate life or death. But still, facing a wife who was about to undergo harsh chemotherapy, his first concern was about the housework, which seemed incredibly insensitive. Well, maybe this is for the best. What? Divorce me. Ha! His sudden demand left me bewildered. After all the dedication I gave him during his illness, he drastically changed his attitude the moment I fell ill. I was reborn after nearly dying and recovering. I don't want to spend my life taking care of an old hag. Victor's recovery was thanks to me being a donor. Yet I realized now he had never shown any gratitude. He callously presented me with divorce papers, already signed by him. You don't even bother to put on makeup at home, you're no longer a woman to me.
But I've been so busy with work, house chores, and childcare, I haven't had time for makeup. That's just an excuse. And now cancer? I can't deal with all this. Quickly write your name here. Victor yelled, and I was upset that he even said that to me. He shouted at me to sign the papers quickly. Despite the anxiety of my cancer diagnosis, I wasn't shocked. Ever since Victor regained his mobility, he had been out and about, and my mistrust had been growing. The fact that I was now sick meant all my love and trust for Victor had vanished. The hardest part was that Victor was undeniably Layla's only dad. I felt guilty about becoming a single parent, but with my upcoming battle with illness, I had no energy left to mend things with Victor. I signed the divorce papers he brought and returned them to him. We're nothing more than strangers now, Victor said, smiling satisfactorily as he saw my signature. Hey, are you done? Don't just barge in here. Because you're taking too long. Suddenly, a young woman I didn't know appeared at the entrance. She was dressed in a flashy one-piece dress and wore heavy makeup, looking beautiful. But upon closer inspection, I recognized her. Are you the nurse from Victor's hospital stay? She was Victor's attending nurse, although unrecognizable in her casual clothes. Apparently, she was his mistress. Yeah. She supported me devotedly when I was sick, unlike you. Victor boasted proudly. Supporting a patient is a nurse's job. And it was absurd to compare her to me. Just get out of this house. It's my family home, after all. He was brazen now. Though it was Victor's family home, it was under Madison's name now. But with the divorce, Madison and I were no longer related. The thought of leaving Madison, who Layla adored and who had been so kind and reliable, saddened me more than leaving Victor. But there was no choice. I packed my few belongings into a suitcase, getting ready for the hospital stay. I had no love left for Victor and wanted to leave as soon as possible. As I silently continued my preparations, Madison and Layla, who had been out shopping, returned. We're home. Oh, who's this? Madison, surprised to see the unfamiliar woman, and Layla, clinging to her and looking around, didn't seem to understand the situation. So I said it clearly. Victor and I are getting divorced. Huh? Madison looked as shocked as I felt. Then, to Layla, she said, have this snack on the way. Handing her a snack she apparently just bought, and sent her to the next room. With only adults left, Madison immediately glared at Victor. What are you thinking? Confronted by Madison instead of me, Victor momentarily backed off. He's divorcing me to start a new life with that woman. Since we'll be strangers, he wants me to leave. Hearing my words, Madison's eyes widened in disbelief. At a time like this, how can you be so selfish? You're the one who should leave. Don't ever show your face to me again, Madison said firmly, and Victor left the house with a click of his tongue. The woman glanced down at me with a triumphant smile and followed Victor. Karina. I'm so sorry. Once they were gone, Madison looked at me with a face full of regret. It wasn't her fault, yet I felt guilty for making her feel this way. Please don't look like that. You've done so much for me, and I can't thank you enough. I felt somewhat relieved that Madison had decisively cut ties with Victor. Even if you divorce Victor, I'm still on your side, Karina. The house Victor lived in before falling ill was already vacated. Now kicked out by Madison, Victor probably had nowhere to live but was likely planning to move in with that woman. Although he had an insurance and subsidies, he wouldn't have much savings left after his illness. Well, he's a stranger to me now, anyway. Victor apparently filed the divorce papers immediately. We were no longer a couple, but Madison still supported me. I was about to be hospitalized and thought about sending Layla to my parents, but Madison offered to take care of her. She's already anxious without her mom. A change of environment would only make it worse. Since her work was stable at the moment, Madison insisted on helping me, so I gratefully accepted. When I was about a month into my hospital stay, my mobile phone rang. It was Victor, and of course, I ignored the call.
Despite my ignoring, he kept calling repeatedly. When Madison visited me, I told her about it. She said Victor had also called her and even had come to the in-laws' house when ignored. She told him it was impossible to meet me since I was in the hospital.
Even if Victor says anything, ignore him. It's too late for him to realize your worth.
Madison's words made me feel supported. After saying goodbye to Madison, Victor appeared in my hospital room.
How did you find me here?
I hadn't told Victor which hospital I was in. After all, he never asked.
I went to the family home today. I saw Madison leaving with flowers, so I thought she might be visiting you.
He apparently followed Madison here. Victor's desperation was frightening, and as I wondered what his motive was, he clung to me.
My illness has relapsed.
It turns out, Victor's leukemia had relapsed. While a bone marrow transplant could lead to remission, it wasn't without the risk of relapse.
So, become my donor again.
His convenient request left me dumbfounded. Here I was, battling cancer, and my ex-husband, who abandoned me when I fell ill, returned as soon as his illness recurred. It was just too convenient.
I don't know, maybe it's karma? That's cruel. And don't you have someone more dedicated to support you?
Saying this, Victor looked frustrated. Apparently, the moment she learned of his relapse, his mistress had promptly broken up with him. She reportedly said she didn't want to deal with a sick person in her personal life.
I have no one but you to rely on now.
Victor pleaded, but I was resolute in my response.
Absolutely not. You're going to abandon me in my illness. You abandoned me first, remember?
Victor fell silent at my words.
Besides, I'm currently consulting a lawyer about you. A lawyer? Yes, for the infidelity compensation and Layla's child support. I'm making sure you pay both in full. But I'm sick.
So am I. As our unproductive argument continued, a doctor, alerted by the commotion, came into the room. He restrained Victor, who was trying to grab me, and took him away. Victor was later handed over to the police. After being interrogated, a restraining order was issued against him from approaching me. Hearing the noise, Madison returned to the room. She seemed thoroughly disgusted by Victor's selfish behavior. I asked Madison to testify, and after consulting with the lawyer, I decided to sue Victor and his mistress for compensation. While Victor was reluctant, his mistress readily agreed to pay as a settlement. Since then, I had been slowly recovering. Madison had been devotedly supporting me, and Layla, though young, had been helping me without any complaints. The cancer was successfully removed without any signs of spreading elsewhere. Meanwhile, Victor still hadn't found a donor and was living in fear every day. He managed to pay my compensation by depleting his savings but seemed unable to afford Layla's child support. Since he couldn't pay it, he was also not allowed to visit her, leading him to battle his illness alone. Madison and I continued to have a good relationship. When I considered moving out with Layla after my recovery, thinking not to impose further on Madison, she scolded me, telling me not to worry about unnecessary things while recovering. She insisted I use her money freely until I saved enough, so we continued living together for a while. Since Layla had grown very fond of Madison, even after saving enough money, we decided to rent a condo nearby. We visited each other's homes and had become like best friends. Despite the terrible separation from Victor and my own illness, having someone like Madison who steadfastly supported me was a blessing. I hoped Layla grows up to be a strong, kind woman with a sense of justice like Madison, and I looked forward to spending more time together. At a high-end French restaurant, invited by my son's wife. Before dinner, I went to wash my hands. When I was about to return to the private room, I overheard her voice through a slightly open door. Yeah. My husband, even though he earns over $100,000, he's such a miser. She seemed to be complaining on the phone.
Son's wife has no rights to inheritance?
I know.
But what belongs to the in-laws belongs to her. If they're saving it, I should be the one to spend it, right?
I was shocked. The bright and energetic son's wife came in. Her personality is the opposite of mine, but I wanted to get along with her. I felt sorry for myself for having thought that. As I repeated her words in my mind, anger slowly began to build up. Unforgivable. I bit my lip. I'll expose everything she's been doing secretly. You better be prepared. I am Maria, a 67-year-old housewife. I worked part-time for many years but retired after falling seriously ill. With my late husband's inheritance and my pension, I can live comfortably without extravagance. Now, I go to choir club activity 3 times a week and enjoy gardening in between. I was concerned about my son named Mike being single, but last year he fortunately married Carol and started a family. She's a bit flashy but a bright and energetic beauty. Apparently, they had been secretly dating for about a year. Carol proposed to him, saying, "I fell in love with your honest nature. Marry me." It was surprising. Working at a big company with a high salary, Mike happily agreed to her wish to quit her job after marriage. She plans to return to part-time work when children come and education costs rise. Both in their 30s. I thought it was a bit late to consider children, but swallowed my words, respecting the couple's decision. The couple, who bought a high-rise condo 15 minutes away by car, show up for family gatherings, Christmas, and long holidays. They help with gardening and shopping, which is a great help. I believed we could continue a good relationship at a comfortable distance. That was, until that incident happened. I heard Carol's hobby is food touring. Despite her slender figure and pretty face, she has a metabolism that doesn't gain weight and often visits trendy restaurants and goes out for lunches at famous hotels, I learned. A housewife with a hobby of food touring? Does Mike's earnings cover the transportation and meal expenses? Such questions crossed my mind, but I reconsidered, thinking she might be using her savings, and stopped prying further. Then, a month later, Carol invited me for lunch. We met on site and entered a chic restaurant. This place was on a gourmet show. Their croquettes are divine, filled with large shrimp. Even the celebrities were praising it. Oh, is that so? What a shame, I can't eat it. When I ordered the country fried steak sandwich set, Carol showed her displeasure. Maria, picky at your age? No, I have a shellfish allergy. Shell, what? She widened her eyes, heavy with false lashes. Crab and shrimp allergies. Eating them causes hives or stomach pain. It started suddenly in adulthood. Can't you just keep eating and get over it? No. It could be life-threatening with difficulty breathing. How troublesome. Her words irked me, but more so, I was stunned by her lack of knowledge. I thought she'd be more knowledgeable than me, being younger. Perhaps her lack of children means less knowledge. But it didn't end there. It seems that she can't remember my allergy. Despite telling her multiple times, she keeps offering me crab and shrimp. Once, she tried to order shrimp fry when dining with Mike and me, or when invited over, she served shrimp gratin for dinner. Carol, Mom has a shellfish allergy. She can't have crab or shrimp. Mike gently reminded her, and she let out a disappointed sigh, her eyebrows drooping. I made this especially for Maria. I'm sorry. I'll eat it later. We repeated such conversations numerous times, and as we were leaving, Mike said apologetically, Sorry, Mom. She's forgetful. I owe a lot to her bright personality, can't really speak up. I should be the one apologizing. When Mike expressed apology, I couldn't complain. Each time, I'd force a smile and apologize, though I did nothing wrong. After a year of finally remembering my allergy, Carol began inviting me to meals frequently. Busy with work, Mike often dines with colleagues, I hear. Perhaps finding it lonely to eat alone, Carol started inviting me. I'm happy to be invited, but her sudden visits can be troublesome. Even retired, I have plans, especially choir club activity. On practice days, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and close to competitions or musical performances, even on weekends and holidays, I'd have to turn her away. I just wish she'd call before coming over. Despite me telling her repeatedly, she always drops by unannounced. Recently, she confronted me loudly at the front door.
Maria, which is more important to you, me or the choir?
Of course, it's the choir. But swallowing those words, I'm sorry, I said with an ambiguous smile, starting my car engine. When I have no plans, I try to accommodate her as much as possible. However, the places Carol prefers are always high-end, trendy restaurants featured on social media or magazines. Since she's the one inviting, I can't let her pay, so I end up footing the bill. Then, at the checkout, she shows her mobile phone to the cashier.
Please add the points.
Every time, she enjoys meals on my dime and casually accumulates points. Complaining to a friend, I was misunderstood as bragging. Having a cute son's wife who invites you to meals is enviable, she said, but spending tens of thousands every month on dining out feels wrong. Yet, I'm not struggling financially, and thinking of it as interaction with my daughter-in-law, it's hard to refuse. These gloomy feelings gradually accumulated. One day, Carol called me. Bracing for another dining invitation, I was surprised by her cheerful voice.
Maria! I heard your choir won the state competition.
It seemed Mike had told her. I couldn't hide my pride. Yes. We're going to the national competition.
That's wonderful.
Thank you. I couldn't help but smile. Her words of congratulations always feel good. Then she made a surprising offer.
Since it's a special occasion, how about celebrating at a nice restaurant? It's on us.
That's so kind. But are you sure? Don't overdo it. Her mentioning a nice place made me anxious, fearing she'd choose a celebrity hotspot.
It's fine. How about La Grenouille in downtown?
I hesitated for a moment. That restaurant is famous for its crab dishes. Sensing that, she laughed and said,
I've heard their other dishes are delicious too. I'll send you some pictures, let me know what you think.
All right. Soon after, images from her arrived on my phone. I swallowed hard, looking at them. Foie gras, roast duck, beef steak. Each luxurious, elegant dish looked incredibly appetizing. Thinking I could eat these, I replied to her.
Then, let's book for 3.
Her response came quickly. I've celebrated with my choir friends, but having my family celebrate too was unexpected. My negative impression of her had faded, and I looked forward to the day. On the promised day, I met Carol near the restaurant.
Mike will be late because of overtime. Start eating if the food arrives,
she said.
Understood. Working on a holiday must be tough.
Walking down the glittering street lined with eateries, we arrived at a sophisticated high-end French restaurant. After announcing our reservation, we were led to a private room.
Maria, do you need the restroom?
Yes, I'll go ahead. I left my bag and stood up. She knew about my frequent restroom needs due to after effects of an illness I had years ago. Returning from the restroom, as I was about to enter the private room, I heard her voice through a slightly open door.
Yeah, Mike earns over $100,000, but he's such a miser.
I couldn't believe my ears. It sounded like she was complaining on the phone. Hiding behind the door, I listened in.
Son's wife has no rights to inheritance?
I know.
But what belongs to the in-laws is hers. If they're saving it, I should be the one to spend it.
Stunned, I was tapped on the shoulder by a woman in a suit. Suppressing a scream, I turned to see her placing a finger to her lips. She is the manager of this restaurant I had seen in official videos. She gestured towards a back private room and entered first. Once the door closed, the manager, with a tense expression, told me, "Please escape now." What? As I looked at her in disbelief, she continued without breaking her serious demeanor. It's hard to trust a stranger, I know. But what I'm about to tell you is all true. Okay. Carol once visited our restaurant with an acquaintance of mine. She did? Yes. The manager shared the conversation she had overheard. Listening skeptically, I was shocked. The anger slowly built up as I replayed her words in my mind. Carol had planned all this from the start. Unforgivable. I bit my lip. I'll expose everything she's been doing in secret. Be prepared. Shaken by the manager's revelation, I left the private room and headed straight for the exit. On my way home, I called the police for advice, which eased some of my anxiety. Once home, I feigned ignorance and contacted Carol.
I'm sorry. I felt unwell, so I left early.
Oh. The plan's ruined.
I mean, never mind.
Her hurried cover-up seemed to confirm the manager's story was true. I was surprised at my own disappointment. It seems I had wanted to believe in Carol, at least a little.
I'm truly sorry. I'll treat you at another restaurant later to make up for it.
Understood. After hanging up with her, I called another number and relayed the content of our conversation. A week later, I called her again. In an apologetic tone, I suggested,
Sorry about the other day. How about a dinner at the recently popular Buchin as an apology?
Really? You got a reservation at Buchin? Awesome. I could hear her excitement over the phone. What's going on? Suddenly, a young man's voice came through. It seemed someone was with her. We're getting a free meal at Buchin. Really? That's amazing.
Carol, are you with friends?
Oops. Yes. I'm having dinner with a friend. Let me know once everything is set. Looking forward to it. After the call ended, I held my mobile phone for a while.
Really looking forward to it.
I murmured in a low voice, quietly laughing to myself. A month later, Carol and I arrived at the restaurant right on time. The restaurant had a cool and stylish atmosphere, different from the upscale French restaurant we'd been to before. In the private room, she looked puzzled at the table for 4. Seats for 4? Are 2 more people coming? I smiled and replied,
Yes, I invited someone you know well. I'm going to the restroom first.
Leaving my bag, I left the room and returned later. Although being cautious of other customers, she was soon captivated by the luxurious meal served. It's delicious. Nothing like the cheap restaurants. The flavors of the ingredients really stand out, so tasty. As we were about to dig into the main dish, there was a light knock, and the door opened. Poking at her meat, she let out a surprised yelp. Sean! What are you doing here?
You're the one who called me, right?
Promised me a fancy meal. I don't know what you're talking about. And who's that woman next to you? Standing next to the young man named Sean was the manager from the upscale French restaurant we'd visited recently. I didn't call her. Stepping forward, the manager gracefully started to speak.
Carol, nice to meet you. I'm Sean's ex-girlfriend. Thank you for visiting our restaurant twice.
Oh! Right, the manager from that fancy French restaurant.
Yes, I invited Sean.
Ex-girlfriend? What do you want? Eager to return to her meal, Carol frowned and asked the manager.
I just wanted to let you know. The conversation you had at our restaurant the other day, we could hear everything outside.
Carol and Sean's faces immediately turned pale. You were still there? Becoming a manager and all. Eavesdropping on customers is unbecoming of an employee.
The door was slightly open, so I went to close it. That's when I overheard your dangerous conversation. Carelessness as usual, I see.
In front of the flustered pair, the manager took out her mobile phone and started swiping on the screen. As I listened, a recording mixed with static noise played Carol and Sean's conversation. We found a notebook with pins at my in-laws. I sneaked a look, so we're all set. So careless. Families don't expect you to snoop, right? I couldn't find the bank card, but with online banking, I just need the PIN to transfer money to my account. Carol and Sean began to look down and fidget. I'll steal Maria's credit card while she's in the restroom. Then I'll drug her to sleep, order loads of food, and leave her alone. She might even get arrested for not paying. The content was so vile, I felt dizzy. This is who I welcomed as my son's wife. We must take all of her late husband's inheritance. I'll max out the credit card with shopping. Rich, yet they live like misers. Definitely stashing away money. Standing side by side, Carol and Sean looked around aimlessly as the manager spoke sternly.
Being allergic, Maria is careful about crab and shrimp in her food. So, a slight change in drink flavor wouldn't be noticed, you thought.
Realizing my allergy was used against me filled me with emptiness. I was genuinely happy when Carol celebrated my choir club entry national competition. Recorded us, huh? Sean muttered, and next to him, Carol confronted the manager.
Recording a customer's conversation is a privacy violation. It was to prevent a crime. I didn't want other customers to lose money to Sean like I did.
So, you've been doing this kind of thing before? I glared at them, and Carol twisted her body, speaking in a sweet, defensive tone.
No. Sean was troubled by this woman's advances, so I just wanted to teach her a lesson. And I haven't done anything to you. Our conversation was just a joke.
Is that so? I'm sorry then. I stood up, pretended to stumble, and kicked Carol's bag placed at my feet. The contents spilled out as the zipper was left open. Rushing to pick them up, I noticed my card in Carol's hand, quickly snatched it, and held it up high.
Oh? Why is my card coming out of Carol's bag?
Strange, isn't it?
And this crumpled memo? Drug Maria with sleeping pills, leave the restaurant, and withdraw her husband's inheritance from the ATM. Then, all the money in that house is mine. A crime plan, right?
The manager unfolded a paper on the table with Carol's hasty handwriting. Sean held his forehead and groaned.
Idiot! Why carry that around? I forget things quickly. I forgot to throw it away.
Despite the mounting evidence, Carol pointed at me, defiant.
It's all Maria's fault. Me.
Yes.
You planted those stingy thoughts in Mike's head, causing me trouble.
Being my stunned, Carol twisted her pretty face in frustration.
Mike, a section chief in a big company and rich, yet talks about managing finances himself. My allowance is just $1,000 a month, can you believe it? It's too little. A housewife getting that much seems sufficient to me.
She snapped back at the disgusted manager.
How is that enough? He wants me to save from it, but it's all gone after eating out and going to the spa. Sean always sponges off me for meals.
Can't help it. You cheated with me. Shrugged Sean.
Carol, didn't you say you proposed to Mike because you fell for his honest nature?
I couldn't help but ask. She twisted her lips into a mocking smile.
That was a lie. I was attracted to his money and prospects. I thought marrying him meant endless fancy meals without working, but he turned out to be such a miser.
Sean, with his arms crossed, nodded in agreement.
When we found the passbook at her in-laws, it was stunning. Yeah, we have to splurge if it's there. I'm married into the family, so why not use family money?
I felt completely drained. Too absurd to even get angry. The bright and energetic eldest son's wife arrived. Her personality was the opposite of mine, but I wanted to get along with her. The thought made me feel pitiful. What must Mike, overhearing this behind the door, be feeling? Just as I began to regret today's plan, he quietly entered the room.
I see.
With a brief mutter, he looked at the astonished Carol and Sean, saying coldly,
So, you've been generously giving my hard-earned money to this guy? It's not like that. I just fed him because he had no money, besides helping with living expenses. It's the same. I'm responsible too for not seeing through your true nature.
Sighing deeply, he stated firmly,
Let's divorce. Please leave the condo by tomorrow. What? Wait. Where will I go if I'm kicked out of the high-rise? I won't be able to eat good food.
Panicked, Carol turned pleading eyes on Mike.
I'm sorry. I'll reflect on my actions. Please don't divorce me. I'll break up with Sean.
It's too convenient now.
Get divorced and earn your own living. No. I enjoy the luxury of spending my husband's money. Earning my own doesn't have the same thrill.
Mike shook his head, tired of her absurd reasoning.
Then marry another rich man. But first, it seems you have something else to do.
What?
Excuse us. A male voice echoed as the door opened. Two stern-faced men entered the room. We're police officers. Carol, Sean, you're suspected of attempted robbery. Please come with us to the station. Mouths agape, the two seemed unable to grasp the situation.
Why were they waiting?
I called them. Both of you might have previous offenses. We'll need to check the recorded audio, so please hand over your mobile phones. Lacking the nerve to protest, the two of them were quietly taken away by the detectives. I apologized to the restaurant staff and the manager for causing a disturbance. In fact, I had reserved the entire restaurant to avoid inconveniencing other customers. Mike, the manager, and I resumed our meal, savoring everything from the main dish to dessert, including what would have been Carol and Sean's portions, leaving both our stomachs and hearts content. The police investigation into Carol and Sean uncovered numerous other crimes. They had been using their partners' cards without permission, drugging them to extract pins, withdrawing money from bank accounts, and then fleeing with the cash. Their modus operandi involved working while searching for targets, then quitting their jobs to move to a new location after stealing money. Though there had been complaints, lack of direct evidence and their constant movement across the country had helped them evade the law. Finally, they were caught this time. The two faced their punishment together, and Mike and Carol inevitably divorced. After 5 years behind bars, Carol would have to pay Mike compensation. Though the division of property reduced her dues to $20,000 after considering the high-rise condo and car, it would be a daunting amount for someone averse to honest work. I hoped Carol would change her ways and lead a decent life henceforth. Mike was deeply shocked by the incident, and I carefully avoided the topic. Especially right after the incident, I was too preoccupied with work and created an opportunity for them to take advantage. I caused trouble for you too, Mom. He was deeply depressed. However, as he began to be recognized at work, including being entrusted with the management of a new project, he gradually regained his spirits. 3 years later, he brought his fiancée, a simple and kind woman, to our family home. They had reconnected at a high school reunion, and her background was reassuringly solid. I hoped that Mike would find true happiness this time. Since the incident, I've occasionally met up with the manager for chats. We share similar interests in books and movies. I've booked her restaurant for choir club gatherings and invited her to our performances. We finished 5th at the national competition, but we're now aiming for the top 3 next time. I want to continue living modestly, enjoying my hobbies and friendships to the fullest, and leading a life true to myself. Didn't you hear me? So, a high school graduate is even poor in hearing. I'm saying I want my child to be born to a more accomplished woman. My genes are too good to be wasted on a mere high school grad. Before we got married, my husband used to say that educational background didn't matter in love. Now, he berates me, a high school graduate, as trash and says he's leaving to remarry a woman with an elite college degree. Oh man, what a misfortune to have a wife with such low education. I'm truly unlucky. With those parting words, he left to elope with the elite college graduate woman. My name is Megan and I turned 27 this year. I married Leo, 3 years my senior. I'm a high school graduate working as an office worker in a trading company, and I met him through a friend from high school. Unlike me, he graduated from a prestigious university and works in sales at a major corporation, a true elite. Initially, I felt unworthy of such an amazing person, but every time we met, educational background doesn't matter. I like you for who you are, he would say. I believed his words and married him. But now, I regret that decision. As soon as we got married, he started looking down on me for my education and income. To him, a high school grad working at a small trading company, I might seem like an underachiever. But it was he who wanted to marry me. During our relationship, sensing my inferiority complex, he comforted me with kind words, now a shadow of his former self. Megan, you should find a new job. It's embarrassing to have a wife working for such a low-income company.
He says this without any remorse.
But I don't want to go to a busier company right now, especially since we're trying to conceive. Besides, I like my current job and the company.
My voice fades under his cold gaze. He sighs in annoyance and retreats to the bedroom before I can say anything else. He probably thought I was going to talk about trying to conceive again. He is right. I wanted to have some time to talk with him about trying to conceive and not making any progress. I've been wanting to have a child since we got married, and he used to be enthusiastic about having 3 siblings. But now, there's no hope of having a child. Whenever I gently ask for his cooperation in trying to conceive,
I don't want to raise a child born to a high school grad.
He avoids me, saying. Shocked by his words, I've been unable to have a proper conversation with him. Our marriage feels empty. He constantly belittles me, demanding gratitude for picking up an elite like himself, and pushes all household chores onto me. Lately, he's even started skimping on living expenses. Apparently, he thinks I spend too much and should save more. I've been cutting back as much as possible, but sometimes I have to dip into my savings from before we were married. I should naturally want a divorce by now, but I can't bring myself to say it to him. I'm afraid of how he might react. Plus, I don't want to betray my parents, who were so happy about our marriage and looking forward to their first grandchild. As our marriage grew colder, he spent less and less time at home. Coming home in the morning became the norm. When he did come home late at night, he'd wake me up to make him snacks, among other outrageous behaviors. And every time he returned late at night, I could smell women's perfume on him. Even without a woman's intuition, it was clear he was cheating. But I was too scared to confront the truth. Then, one day, he said he was leaving.
My real girlfriend is finally pregnant. I'm moving in with her tomorrow.
I was stunned. Didn't you hear me?
A high school grad is even bad at listening. My superior genes are too good for someone like you.
He ranted without being asked. He had been cheating, and the woman was a younger graduate from the same prestigious university as him. She got pregnant, so he decided to cut ties with me and remarry her. She was a new employee, you see.
Getting married and taking maternity leave right after joining would affect her career. And since I'm such a great catch, I get a lot of introductions to women from my boss. So I thought I'd marry some convenient woman until she finished her rookie year.
That convenient woman turned out to be me. With no need to hide anything anymore, his face was more hideous than I'd ever seen.
You work for a trading company, right? Even if it's small, I thought you might have some useful connections or manufacturers. But what a mistake! You have no decent contacts, and all you do is nag about kids, being just a high school grad.
He said that, looking at me. As I stood there speechless, he laughed mockingly and stood up from the sofa.
Oh man. To be married to such a low-educated woman. I am truly unfortunate. A worthless woman like you wasting my precious time.
Without even a glance at me, he walked out the front door. I listened to the sound of the door locking and took deep breaths. My tense body slowly relaxed, and cold sweat broke out all over me. Now that I understood Leo's scheme, I had no hesitation. I quickly had my dinner and secluded myself in my room before he returned. The next day, I left home early for work and picked up divorce papers. My hands trembling with nerves, I managed to open the door to find no sign of Leo. His favorite sofa in the living room was also gone. Searching the house, I found all of his belongings missing. I hadn't seen him since he left yesterday. On the table, I saw a stack of papers and a thin envelope. Turning over his neatly written note, I found completed divorce papers. The note said, "I've told the in-laws, so don't contact me again." I emotionlessly filled in the blanks on the divorce papers. Not a tear was shed. After finishing, I picked up the envelope marked settlement money. Inside, there were only $2,000. Perhaps he intended it as compensation for the divorce. Though far too little, I could use it to hire a lawyer for a proper settlement claim. I was planning to visit a law firm on the weekend when I received a call. It was from the house management company, saying the rent for the last and current month was overdue. Unable to reach Leo, they called my mobile. My savings, already depleted from covering living expenses, were insufficient. I had no choice but to use the $2,000 from the envelope. At the law firm, they told me it would be difficult to claim more. Most of the money left by him had already been spent on rent. It seemed that by using the rent money, I had accepted the settlement from Leo. Since we lived together, I had an obligation to pay rent. Knowing I had no savings, he must have deliberately left the $2,000 to prevent me from taking further action. I had unwittingly used the money he left. With no savings and most of my income going to rent, I couldn't afford to live there. I began searching for cheaper accommodation and soon moved back to my parents' house after informing them of the divorce. The shock made me never want to marry again, but my parents thought differently. Back home, they encouraged me daily, saying I was still young enough for marriage and children. Feeling guilty about disappointing them, I started looking for a new partner while commuting to my now distant job. I filled my schedule quickly, perhaps to distract myself. Maybe I wanted to overwrite that nightmarish marriage with a fulfilling life. My efforts bore fruit sooner than expected. During my search for a partner, I clicked with a man, and 2 years after my divorce, I was remarried and had a daughter. My new husband, Anthony, was the same age as me and also a high school graduate. He worked at a car repair shop near my parents' house and we met at a local marriage party. Anthony was self-conscious about being a high school graduate, but I never chose people based on their education, unlike my ex-husband. Anthony never cared about my education either and was always generous and never looked down on people. We set up our new home near my parents' house, and I was busy yet happy with work and raising our child. In the whirlwind of days, I had long forgotten Leo, my ex-husband. It was about 10 years after the divorce when I unexpectedly ran into him. I was at a German language speech competition with my daughter. "Is that Megan?" I turned around when a man called out from behind. Though he had aged in the last decade, I recognized that face I wished I could forget. Next to Leo stood a boy about the same age as my daughter. Noticing my gaze, he said with an untroubled smile, "He's my son with Olivia. She's an elite, a state university graduate. We're paying a lot for his gifted education. Olivia must be the college graduate he eloped with." He bragged about his child's intelligence, ignoring me. As I remained silent, he glanced at my daughter. "Where's your husband?" "Let me guess, he's a high school grad too, right?" It was true, but admitting that my husband was also a high school graduate would only invite more insults. Wanting to avoid trouble, I didn't confirm or deny, but quickly left with my daughter. I knew it, children of high school grads have a different look. Just like those foolish faces around here. No way such a child can speak decent German. He said mockingly, stepping in front of us. I was stunned by his audacity to look down on others, even children, in front of his own child. Though my daughter didn't understand the meaning of high school grad, she sensed she was being insulted and her face twisted as if she was about to cry. Seeing this, I glared at him. "Can't you stop insulting even children? Aren't you ashamed as a dad?" My anger didn't faze him. It's the truth. A high school grad's child participating in a German contest is absurd. Such children should just play in the park. He said his piece and disappeared into the crowd with his child. Anger boiled within me, but seeing my daughter's anxious face, I composed myself. "It's okay, you've practiced a lot. Just do like we did at home, and you'll win. Mom guarantees it." I spoke to her quietly, meeting her eyes. As her mother, I had to be strong. She nodded slowly, digesting my words. After registering, I took my seat in the audience. Now, it was just a matter of trusting my child's abilities. I took a deep breath, waiting for the competition to start. Most children, including Leo, were overwhelmed by nerves and the atmosphere, giving poor speeches. My daughter, however, spoke fluently and clearly, the best of all the participants. My prediction was right. She won the German speech competition. leaving the venue with her, holding a large bouquet and wearing a medal around her neck. We planned to celebrate at a fancy restaurant.
Megan! Wait!
A loud voice called from behind. I quickly shielded my daughter and turned to face Leo. His child's eyes were red from crying, enviously looking at my daughter's medal.
It's ridiculous that your child won. A child raised by a high school grad speaking so well.
He was upset that his child hadn't won, and my daughter had. Assuming we couldn't possibly speak German, he ranted. People exiting the venue watched him curiously, but he seemed oblivious.
Which school did you send her to? Or did you hire a tutor from your meager earnings?
I haven't enrolled her in any classes, nor have I hired a tutor. When I stated this simply, he looked at me incredulously.
There's no way. You can't even speak German properly.
Have you forgotten what I do? He looked puzzled. Working in a trading company's office, you need a decent command of German. Plus, Grandpa lives in Germany, so I grew up hearing German. My daughter learned it naturally through conversations with him. I patted my daughter's head, who was peeking from behind me. I've been speaking German with my grandfather since I was a child. I chose to work in the trading company to utilize my German skills. When my daughter was born, we often video called him to show him her growth, and she naturally started speaking German. I never forced German education on her. But gradually, she began watching German cartoons on streaming sites and picking up German books for kids at bookstores. Anthony and I just supported her interests. It seems my daughter, naturally interacting with my grandfather, became fluent enough to converse without a translator. Leo started to shiver with anger as I explained. His face flushed with humiliation, unable to accept defeat from someone he looked down upon.
That's unbelievable. I'll complain to the organizers. My child has been unfairly judged.
He stormed back into the venue, leaving his child alone. Unable to leave his child unattended, I waited silently for him to return. Soon, 2 security guards escorted him out of the venue. He gritted his teeth, clearly upset by my daughter's victory. As he approached brazenly, a woman's voice unexpectedly called out to him.
Leo, what a coincidence to see you here.
The woman, wearing a neat pantsuit and a speech competition staff badge, caught his attention. With her arrival, he calmed his anger and tensed up. Unable to leave, I stood there with my daughter hidden behind me, watching the scene.
Do you have a child, Leo? I heard you were single. Is she your wife?
I shook my head to her unexpected question.
No, he's my ex-husband. Then, is this child yours and Leo's?
She eyed the boy standing beside Leo.
No, that's his child with the woman he married after our divorce.
Her eyes sharpened. Leo, pale and sweating, couldn't hide his shock. The aftermath was predictable. Sensing trouble, I quickly left the scene. Turns out, Leo, after marrying a college graduate, had been falsely claiming to be single and was involved with a woman who graduated from a prestigious foreign university. She was involved in organizing the speech competition and realized she was the other woman when she saw him with his child. His wife's fury over the affair exploded. The next day, she took their child and returned to her parents' home. Now, Leo is burdened with child support until his child reaches adulthood, compensation for the affair, and education loan payments. Rumors spread uncontrollably, revealing his pattern of switching women based on their education, leading to his forced resignation. My daughter later participated in a national German speech competition. Though she didn't win, her near-native proficiency drew attention, deepening her interest in German. Encouraged by Anthony, I left the trading company. And now, I started a German language school at home, also assisting my grandfather with novel translations. In the dim light of the evening, inside the room, the doorbell rang. I wiped the tears streaming down my cheeks and looked toward the entrance. My mother-in-law Anna and my sister-in-law Sophia stood side by side. Oh, they've come to help. I hurried towards the entrance. Opening the door, I was stunned.
Come on, please. Bring them in.
Anna's voice directed people who appeared to be movers. "Excuse us, we're coming in." And they entered the house. "What? Wait, what's going on?" Hearing my bewildered voice, my son Noah, who was in his room upstairs, hurried down the stairs. "What's happening, Mom?" Noah asked, watching the movers bustling around. "Well," I turned back to Noah, confused, when Anna and Sophia spoke up. "We're taking my son's house. You guys need to leave." "Yeah, that's right. Get out now." Meanwhile, my father-in-law John efficiently directed the movers, and the boxes were carried into the living room as well as the other rooms one after another. Suddenly, Noah, his face turning pale, exclaimed, "No, you can't do that. Don't you know, aunties?" His face was ghostly pale. "This house isn't Dad's anymore, and it's haunted." John turned around, and the movers stopped in their tracks. Catching everyone's attention, Noah shook with a tremor. "My name is Emma, 41 years old. My husband, Liam, was a 42-year-old company employee. He had a calm nature and doesn't indulge in alcohol, smoking, or gambling. He worked diligently every day for our family. Liam's hobby was watching movies with me on weekends. Until last year, our son Noah used to join us, but since starting middle school, he preferred spending weekends with his friends over us. While I felt a bit lonely, Liam seemed to find it endearing. He fondly recalled not following his parents' advice to go to a prestigious school, his time as a class representative and student council president, and talked about his high school best friend. "Jackson was your best friend, right? You've always been a top student, haven't you?" I teased. Liam laughed. "If my parents heard that, they'd be outraged," squinting his eyes while reminiscing. "Still, I had a great time in school," he murmured. "Are you having fun now?" I asked while watching a rented DVD at home. "Yeah, I am," Liam answered simply. Then, looking around the living room. "No," he corrected himself. "It's more than fun. It's happiness. We chose and bought this house ourselves. I have a kind wife and a healthy son." His face clearly showing that. "There's nothing more I want." From the bottom of his heart made me blush. "That's where you say beautiful wife." I swung my arm in mock frustration, and Liam dodged with a laugh. All right. I'm happy with my beautiful wife. All I need to do now is work hard to pay off that mortgage." We were still paying off our home loan. Liam had arranged the loan so that I, a housekeeper, wouldn't need to work. "I'm the lucky one to have such a kind husband," I thought to myself, watching the DVD next to Liam. Liam would always say that our married life is happy, but I can't help but think it wasn't quite happy for him back when he was living at his parents' house before we got married. It's apparent to anyone that he didn't get along well with his parents and his sister, Sophia. I heard the whole issue started when Liam didn't attend the high school his parents wanted him to go to. Sophia, who is 2 years older than him, obediently enrolled in the high school chosen by their parents. She went to college and even got a job at a company her parents approved of, just as they wanted. My sister has become incapable of thinking or deciding for herself. According to Liam, that's how it was. It's easy to just do as your parents say, but then you become a person who can't act without their instructions. You lose the ability to adapt to situations and make your own decisions. As expected, once Sophia started working at the company, she couldn't do anything without being told what to do, felt uncomfortable, and quit within a year. Then, her parents quickly arranged her marriage to Harry, my brother-in-law. Even though Liam was there, they made Harry their adopted son-in-law and lived with him. To me, it doesn't make sense to adopt a son-in-law when you already have a capable son like Liam. And it's not like John's family was that wealthy or anything. John was just a regular company employee. I didn't see the need for them to struggle financially to send their kids to a preparatory school. "Ah, that's just my mother and father putting on a show," Liam would say. Apparently, there was a wealthy family living nearby. and their daughter was the same age as Sophia. When they were younger, they used to play with the neighborhood kids, but that changed once they started attending preparatory school. Nothing in particular happened between them and that family, but Liam's parents envied that girl and her family. Determined to send their own children to a preparatory school, they saved up diligently and managed to enroll Sophia into one. As a result, their dinners were humble, except for Sophia's luxurious sandwiches, a rather odd dietary life. Not seeing the need for such a struggle, Liam chose to attend a local high school. I think that was the right decision. But his parents were furious, and from that day, their attitude towards Liam noticeably changed. They used to beam with vanity when mentioning the high school Sophia attended. When people would remark, "I bet your son is too," they might have felt embarrassed admitting he went to a local school. But there's no need to dream of a higher standard of living than necessary. The in-laws and Sophia's family of 3 kids lived in a rented house. Not that there's anything wrong with renting, but I do wonder if they could have spent their money more effectively instead of just for appearances. They even went into debt to send Sophia to a preparatory school and college, and they're still paying it off. I could never understand their way of thinking or their sense of money. This also applied to the allowances given to the kids. The difference in the amount given to Sophia's kids and to Noah, our son, was blatantly obvious. It might be a difference in affection for the grandchildren living with them, but I can't help feeling sorry for Noah. It makes me sigh to think that even Noah is affected by this. It seems that they also didn't like the fact that we owned our house. A 2-story single-family home. Our house is bigger than the in-laws. Showing off with a study, huh? This house is too nice for you. They often came over to our place and made such snide remarks. On top of that, they'd make sarcastic comments like, "Look, there's a stain here," or "The flooring is discolored," and so on and so forth. They would also nitpick. It's not that impressive after all. They would complain. I really don't see the point of them doing that. If they don't like it, they shouldn't come over. They're just jealous. Or so he said. They're envious because they don't have money and we bought a house, even though we're paying a mortgage. Liam laughed, saying it's all because of their strange habit of keeping up appearances. Harry must have been earning a decent salary. John, who was in his 60s, was still working. But their debt repayment was holding them back. Don't worry about it, Liam said, but Anna and Sophia would come over when Liam or Noah weren't around. Lately, they've been walking around our house freely while I prepare coffee. This should be our bedroom. My husband likes this room. This room is spacious, maybe it could be a study room for the kids? They'd exchange such comments with each other. What are you doing? When I finally let my discomfort show, they just smirked and said, "Oh dear, we were just looking around." Yeah, and you take your sweet time making coffee. I closed the door of the room they were snooping in and had them return to the living room. When Anna asked for a spare key, I felt a bit scared. I couldn't possibly give a spare key to Anna, who walks around someone else's house uninvited. There's a chance she could enter our house when no one is around and rummage through drawers and closets. I thought it was so selfish of them to ask for a spare key when they treated Liam so poorly. I'll have to talk to Liam about that. I dodged the question and had Liam call later to firmly refuse the request. How could you deny a key to your own parents? Anna was furious, but unfortunately, it's his parents who are untrustworthy, so it can't be helped. Anyhow, just come over when either Emma or myself are at home, Liam said, ending the call. Good health is the most important thing. It's a saying we often hear. At this age, I suddenly felt the weight of those words. Liam was diagnosed with cancer. After feeling unwell in his stomach and getting tested, we were lost for words. Each test revealed more cancer spread throughout his body. The doctor said that without surgery, he only had a few months to live. We had insurance, but it wasn't enough. We had to deal with not only the hospital bills but living expenses and our mortgage too. The happiness we had built fell apart in an instant. I was trembling with fear of losing Liam and the uncertainty of our future. I didn't know what to do and was just scared.
I'll ask my parents for help.
My parents had already passed away. Being an only child, I had no other family to turn to.
Okay. I'll go too.
We told Liam's parents, Sophia and her husband, about his condition and asked for financial help.
Cancer can be treated pretty easily these days, right?
Sophia didn't seem to grasp the situation. The in-laws were hesitant about giving financial aid, though not as much as Sophia.
I thought I heard you finished paying off your debt a few months ago.
Yeah, we finally managed to.
Please, we will definitely pay you back. Lend us the money for the surgery and hospitalization. The money you were going to spend on my education, lend it to us now. Please. I will work too, please just help us.
We begged, going on our knees and crossing our hands together. No way.
We've only just started being able to afford some luxuries recently. I have insurance that will waive the mortgage if I die. Should that happen, I'll even sell the house to pay back what we borrowed from you. We'll write a memorandum too.
We pleaded again and again. But despite somewhat expecting it, we were devastated when Liam's parents shook their heads, refusing to help.
In that case, why don't you just sell the house now?
Of course, we knew that might be our only option eventually. But if we were to sell it then, we would have to make sure that the money we make can cover hospital bills, treatment costs, and even the rent for a new place for us after subtracting the remaining mortgage. I heard that before we got married, Liam used to send money home to his parents even after he had moved out. It seemed only fair that they could spend a little money for Liam now. No matter how much we pleaded, my in-laws and Sophia's answers didn't change. Liam straightened his back and replied in a flat voice.
Understood.
That's fine. As we were leaving.
Wait a minute.
Harry caught up with us.
This isn't nearly enough, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't have any savings.
And he handed Liam $1,000. Of course, he wouldn't have savings. He was helping with the debt repayment. Despite their boastful claims of,
we finally paid it off.
It was also thanks to Harry.
I'll try to persuade them again. Please don't lose heart.
We thanked Harry deeply for his kind words.
Thank you. Just the thought is enough. But still, do you have a plan?
Yes.
Like my sister said, we're thinking of selling the house. Really?
I couldn't help but exclaim. Selling the house isn't simple, there are many procedures to go through, and it will take time. There wouldn't be enough time for Liam's hospitalization, which was in a few days. Even if we managed to sell it, we would need to find a new place to live. It's not going to be easy or quick.
Don't worry. I just remembered someone who might be able to help.
Liam said, smiling at me. Liam fought hard with the cancer for 2 years since the diagnosis. Despite being given only a few months to live, we made many happy memories as a family of 3, in and out of the hospital. We had grown distant with my in-laws, but when the doctor said,
he probably can't return home,
I contacted them. They visited a few times, but they would just say, he still looks okay, in a cold manner, and go back home right away. It's as if they were just coming to see how much longer Liam has left. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the thought. Surely not.
Contact his family,
the doctor said. The time had finally come. I called Anna hastily.
Oh my gosh! I need to hurry. Yes, it's urgent. You must come to his room right away.
Huh? Oh, okay.
I'll come if I can.
The call ended abruptly, and I returned to Liam and Noah in the hospital room. Only Harry, who came directly from work, and Liam's best friend Jackson showed up. Liam barely opened his eyes, but looked happy to see everyone before closing them for the last time. Harry and Jackson helped with the funeral arrangements. Harry stayed with Liam while Jackson drove Noah and I home so that we could get ready. It was morning when we left the hospital, but the sun had already started to set. We hadn't even cleaned up after breakfast because we had left in a hurry. I turned on the lights in the dim house in the evening. I sat down in the living room and flipped through a photo album. Tears flowed as I looked through it. I wiped the tears falling onto the table and chose a photo of Liam out of all the memorable photos. The doorbell rang. I wiped the tears from my cheeks and looked at the entrance. Anna and Sophia were standing side by side. Oh, they've come to help. Even though they didn't make it in time for Liam's final moments, I hurried to the entrance, thankful they came. But I was stunned when I opened the door.
Come on, bring everything in.
Anna's voice directed people who appeared to be movers.
Excuse us, we're coming in.
And they entered the house.
What? Wait, what's going on?
Hearing my bewildered voice, my son Noah, who was in his room upstairs, hurried down the stairs.
What's happening, Mom?
He asked, watching the movers bustling around. Well, I turned back to Noah, confused, when Anna and Sophia spoke up.
We're taking my son's house. You guys need to leave. Yeah, that's right. Get out now.
Meanwhile, John efficiently directed the movers, and the boxes were carried into the living room as well as the other rooms one after another. Suddenly, Noah, his face turning pale, exclaimed,
No, you can't do that. Don't you know, aunties?
Noah's face was ghostly pale.
This house isn't Dad's anymore, and it's haunted.
John turned around, and the movers stopped in their tracks. Catching everyone's attention, Noah shook with a tremor. In the midst of all this, a figure comes in through the entrance.
What the heck are you doing bringing stuff into my house without permission? Get it out right now.
Everyone jumped up at the sound of Jackson's angry voice, which seemed to echo throughout the house, or rather, the entire neighborhood. The movers began taking the stuff they had just brought in back outside without checking with my in-laws, their customers. Not knowing what to do with the boxes, they just left them on the street in front of the house.
No, my desk!
I heard my nephew's voice and turned to see Harry standing there with his 3 children. The children, seeing their belongings abandoned on the street, made complaints one after another, while Harry asked Sophia.
I came over when I heard about the sudden move, but what's this all about?
Although Harry is usually mild-mannered, he was furious.
What? But Mom said we were moving. What are you talking about? You agreed too.
In the midst of an ugly argument between mother and daughter, Harry coldly declared,
I can't deal with you all anymore. We're getting a divorce. What? Wait, what are you saying?
Harry negotiated directly with the movers to take only his and the children's belongings to his parents' house.
Sorry for the trouble at such a difficult time. I'll have them take the kids and our stuff to my parents' place.
Without giving Sophia a second glance, Harry and the kids left with the movers. Sophia collapsed crying on the road, and the in-laws stood dumbfounded among the remaining belongings. The neighbors came out to see what was happening, turning the situation into a nightmare.
Can we at least move these inside so they're not in the way?
I nodded at his words.
Yes, that's fine. This is your house, after all. What do you mean?
The in-laws stared at us, confused. This is the truth. The day after being refused financial help by my in-laws 2 years ago, Liam brought home with him a very tough-looking man. That man was Jackson. He ran a real estate business and even gave me his business card. I was told that he was a high school classmate of Liam's. Not only was his face tough-looking, but he had an intimidating vibe, so I couldn't help but imagine that he was involved with shady business. Noah got frightened and clung to me tightly, even though he was already in middle school. I glanced at Liam with concern. Noticing my gaze, Liam tilted his head and then laughed as if he just realized something.
It's okay. Jackson might look scary, but he's a respectable member of society now. Now?
That's when Noah timidly pointed it out. Jackson's eyes widened, and he smacked Liam's head.
Liam!
Liam was ill, for God's sake. I couldn't believe it, but Liam just laughed heartily. Noah looked so pale that I was worried if he was even breathing.
Jackson, you didn't even come to our wedding, even though I sent you an invitation. And you never pay us a visit even though I invite you over.
I suddenly remembered. The name Jackson often came up in Liam's stories about his school days and when he went out drinking. From the stories, he seemed like a good friend, so I never imagined this was the same person. You can see why. My looks scare people, so showing up at your wedding or visiting would just cause trouble.
Is that why you're still single? I'll hit you again.
I could tell from their light banter that this was indeed the Jackson that Liam had been talking about. I couldn't help but chuckle at their conversation. Both stopped and looked at me.
Sorry. It's just that Liam is so excited, like a child. Huh? He's always like this. Jackson. Remember, Noah is here too. A father's dignity is important. Dignity, that's something you've never had. Noah.
Noah's remark lightened the mood. I told Jackson that Liam was really disappointed he didn't come to our wedding and that we want him to visit any time. Thank you. Now, let's move on to business. We don't have the luxury of time. Jackson's demeanor changed suddenly to a serious expression. First, let me look at the condition of the house. Jackson went around checking each room. Once he finished examining the exterior walls and the meter box, he pulled out his laptop and started typing something. After a while, he showed us the screen.
How about this amount for the selling price?
I was taken aback by the amount he proposed. It was higher than what we had paid when we bought it. It's a very generous appraisal, but can we really sell it for this price? It's been about 10 years since we moved in, and there would be no point if it doesn't sell. We hadn't renovated it in years. Like Anna and Sophia said, there are stains here and there. I heard about that from Liam. They were talking about what they were going to do with each room, right? Yes. That means they think it's still perfectly habitable. Don't worry, it will sell for this price. Full of confidence, Jackson assured us. You can trust him. Liam added. Understood. Please proceed with this price. As I agreed, Jackson quickly spread several documents on the table. Oh, and we need to find somewhere else to live. At my words, Jackson responded. Sure. With a smile. He laid out rental agreement papers as well. First, I will buy this house directly. That solves one problem. Then, I'll rent it back to you. There, the second problem is also solved. I was taken aback, but Jackson continued. I'll transfer the money from the sale into your account within a few days. From there, we can pay off the remaining loan. Jackson smiled reassuringly. It was a boyish smile that made his earlier intimidating impression vanish. As we filled out the documents, I noticed the rental fee.
$100.
Both Liam and Noah looked surprised too, peering over the document. Shouldn't it be $1,000? Liam said. It's a typo, right? And as we laughed, it's not a mistake. Jackson said. What? I owe that much to Liam. After a moment of thought. No, you don't. Liam said. But Jackson told me about their high school days. Jackson was a real delinquent back then. He had been in trouble with the police several times and was often in fights which left his mother in tears. One day, his mother, a single mom, was hospitalized. She had fainted from stress and exhaustion. Rushing to the hospital, Jackson was shocked to see how frail and small his mother had become. He realized it was his fault and bawled his eyes out like a child. After that, he changed his ways, stopped getting into fights, and stayed out of trouble with the police. But then one day, a cigarette butt was found on the rooftop of the school building. It caught fire in a nearby dumpster and caused a small blaze. This became a problem at school, and they assumed Jackson, who had a bad reputation, was the culprit. No matter how much he denied it, saying, "It's not me." No one believed him due to his past behavior. He was at risk of being expelled. When his mother burst into tears again, Liam believed in Jackson's innocence. He was the only one who believed in my innocence. He was the student council president at the time. We were in the same class but had never really talked before. Jackson reminisced, saying Liam had protested to the principal, did some investigation among the students, gathered evidence, and found the real culprit. But you had insisted you didn't do it, right? Naturally, I believed him. No way. But thanks to you, I graduated high school and gave back to my mother. I even became the president of a company. That's why Jackson said he owed that much. The three of us, as a family, exchanged glances and gratefully accepted the rent proposal. This was what happened that day 2 years ago. As Noah said, I own this house now and am renting it to this family. If you don't believe me, I'll show you the documents later. Jackson glanced at Noah, then turned back to the in-laws with a smile. However, either family is welcome to rent the house. Shall I offer you a bargain? Jackson smiled at my astonishment. I'll also introduce you to new properties. After the funeral, we moved out of the house and into an apartment Jackson had recommended. Just unpack the bare essentials. We'll probably be able to move back to that house soon. Jackson said with a mischievous smile, and I asked him what made him think so. Noah, curious too, came closer to us. I actually thought about kicking them out that day. But then I changed my mind. Listen, here's the plan. Jackson leaned in, as if sharing a secret with us. 3 days later, we went back to our old home saying, we left a couple of things behind. Under the pretense that we were retrieving them. Anna reluctantly offered snacks when Jackson joined us. How's the new place? Not bad at all. John replied contentedly. Really? Noah asked. Yes, really. No noises from the empty stairs? Or in the shower room? Noah looked around the living room fearfully. Right, Noah said there were ghosts, didn't he? I don't think Mom knows about it, but ever since Dad got hospitalized, I started to hear strange noises. Once, I saw the hem of a skirt on the stairs, thinking Mom was back, but no one was there. That's ridiculous. Anna's words were cut off as Noah and Jackson simultaneously looked upstairs. Is there someone on the second floor? That was impossible. Sophia completely lost her vigor after her divorce with Harry was finalized. Although she was silent, she was in the living room. What? Stop with this nonsense. I didn't hear anything. Noah and Jackson exchanged glances and hurriedly packed up. That's good to hear. We'll take our leave then. They rushed out of the house and quickly got into the car. The in-laws, who had come to see us off at the entrance, looked frightened. In the car, we burst into laughter. Jackson's plan was to use the lie about ghosts that Noah had made up on the spot. This is for treating Liam poorly for so long. Where in the world do you find a parent or sister neglecting their dying son and getting ready to move into his house? I couldn't agree more with the words that Jackson spat out while he was driving. Jackson and Noah played such pranks on them repeatedly. Eventually, it was even said that mysterious incidents that neither of them had even mentioned would occur in that house. The in-laws and Sophia got creeped out, mistaking the noises in the house for poltergeists. They complained to Jackson and Noah, but we never experienced such things. Jumping to conclusions can be a scary thing, Noah said, laughing. Eventually, the in-laws and Sophia couldn't stand it anymore and moved out of the house. They rented a place within their budget, introduced by Jackson. That was just business. I made sure to find them a decent, budget-friendly old apartment, Jackson said with a sly smirk, and Noah and I applauded. By the way, Sophia, after divorcing Harry, had to start working again to pay child support. Seems like she's getting a taste of the harshness of society. I wish her all the best now that she has to single-handedly take care of her parents who had looked after her. Eventually, we returned to the house we bought with Liam. Although we couldn't buy it back, We still live there for a rent of $100. Harry and his 3 kids have started to visit again. Sophia seems to be asking for reconciliation, but Harry is not considering it at all. Once a month, Jackson comes over to collect the rent. He times it with Liam's monthly anniversary. After looking at Liam's photo, we have dinner together, and he even listens to Noah's troubles, now a high school student. And Noah and I have a little secret joy. It's the stories about Liam's school days that we hear occasionally at dinner. We hear so many stories that we never knew about, and we learn new things about Liam. I'm sure Liam is smiling with us around the dining table. "No way, come on," Liam would say, making childish excuses.
I am Grace Miller. I married Hamilton, whom I've been with since our student days. And now we have a daughter, Sarah, who's in high school. We're a family of 3. We're not wealthy, but we live a reasonably happy life. Hamilton has been on a work assignment alone for several years now and rarely comes home. Still, he never fails to contact me daily through WhatsApp and always sends gifts on anniversaries. Even from afar, he never forgets about me or our daughter. That's why I've always been grateful to my husband, working hard alone in a distant place. But lately, I've felt a bit of coldness in his attitude. It was slight, but it was bothering me. Recently, a birthday present for our daughter arrived from him. Sarah was overjoyed, and I was very happy too. That night, I reported this to him over the phone. "Hey Hamilton, Sarah was incredibly happy with the present." "That's good to hear." His reply felt a bit indifferent, but I thought he might just be tired from work, and tried not to worry too much. "But you know, if you had been here to give her the present yourself, it would have been even better. You haven't been home for months. Sarah doesn't say anything, but I think she's feeling lonely. I'm lonely too." I gently conveyed my true feelings like this. However, his reply was still very cold and curt. "Sorry, I can't make it home easily, but I'm sending enough for living expenses to the bank account, so you shouldn't be having any trouble, right? I'm busy with work here, so please don't be selfish and cause me trouble." With that, he hung up the phone, unilaterally. I worried if I had made him angry. He's working hard alone, far away. This solo assignment won't last forever. I decided not to complain anymore until we could live together as a family of 3 again. Several months passed since then. Hamilton's absence from home continued as before. But something had changed. The daily WhatsApp messages he used to send stopped coming altogether. When I called, he would say, "I'm busy," and hang up quickly. I started to feel a growing distrust towards my husband. The school went on summer break, and my daughter, who's been working hard at her part-time job, said to me, "Hey Mom, next week is Dad's birthday, right? I've saved up for my part-time job, so I want to give him a present. What do you think would be good?" My daughter, wanting to give her father a gift with the money she earned from her part-time job, I felt very happy about her growth. "Whatever you choose, Sarah, I'm sure he'll love it. A present with the money you worked hard for? Hamilton will definitely be happy." "Do you think so? Mom, will you come with me to pick out the present tomorrow?" My daughter asked, a bit shyly. It reminded me of how she's still a child in some ways. A gift from my grown-up daughter. I'm sure my husband would be delighted. On the other hand, I had a bad feeling. But I couldn't let my daughter notice that. "How much are you planning to spend?" I asked her about her budget. "I have this money to use," she said timidly, telling me the amount. I was surprised at the sum. "When did you save up so much?" "I worked really hard. I wanted to buy Dad something nice," she said with a smile. She had been balancing her studies and work during school days and working almost full-time during the summer break. At an age where she might want to spend money on herself, she had been saving it for her father's birthday present. I was deeply moved by her thoughtful spirit. "Then let's pick something that will make him happy." With that, I went out to the downtown area with my daughter. It had been a long time since we went shopping together, and it was fun. We chose a somewhat pricey whiskey for my husband, who loves alcohol. I could almost see his happy face. "Hey, why don't we go see him in person?" I suddenly suggested. "The last time we met was probably the beginning of this year. It's been over half a year since we saw each other, so he would surely be happy if our daughter visited." But wouldn't it bother Dad if we suddenly showed up?" "Not at all. Think of it as a surprise present. I'll come with you, but I have a friend living nearby, so I thought I'd visit her after a long time. I'll meet up with you later." "Yeah, then I guess I'll go see him. I hope Dad will be happy." Seeing my daughter smile like that made me very happy. That night, I called my friend from school days, Kelly. "Grace, it's been a while. What's up so sudden?" No wonder she was surprised. The last time we talked was a few years ago at a reunion. Since then, I hadn't been in much contact, and now I suddenly called her. "Sorry for calling so suddenly. Actually, I'm going to be in your area soon with my daughter. I was hoping to see you then." "Oh, is your daughter coming too?" "No, it'll just be me. She's going to give a birthday present to her father. He's on a solo assignment there right now." "Really? But wouldn't it be better to spend the time together as a family? Why are you going separately?" "Well, there's something that's been bothering me. I want to talk to you about it in person. But I needed to give her the gist of it over the phone. I felt that Kelly would understand and give me good advice. So I ended up telling her all about my suspicions towards my husband." "I see. If that's the case, maybe I can help. Your husband had a reputation for being a ladies' man since our student days, Grace. I thought he settled down after marrying you. But a woman's intuition is often right at times like these. This is from my own experience. I want to hear more when we meet," Kelly said. Contacting her was not just because she lived near my husband's work location. There was a deeper reason, but that's between us. "You're the only one I can talk to about this, Kelly. I really appreciate it. Just hope Sarah doesn't end up getting hurt," she said. "Exactly. I hope it's nothing. But honestly, I don't want to see my daughter, who adores her father, get hurt. My worries were just me overthinking, and I hoped nothing would happen." "Hey, Grace, I have a suggestion." Kelly started proposing a plan to clear my doubts about my husband. She herself had been cheated on by her ex-husband, leading to their divorce. She seemed to know what to do in such situations from experience. "That sounds really helpful, but should I ask you to do something like that?" "Leave it to me. I've been through similar experiences. I can't promise I'll be of help, but I'd be happy if I could be," she said. I hoped it was really nothing, but unfortunately my bad feeling turned out to be true. A few days later, Kelly contacted me. "Grace, I've found out quite a bit. I'm sending you some photo data to check." With that brief message, she sent several photos. She had investigated my husband. My old friend turned out to be capable of detective-like work. Shocked by the contents of the data, although I had braced myself, it was still a big shock when I actually saw it. Does this count as cheating? It's hard to say without more proof, but at least it's evidence of him acting suspiciously and secretly. Yes, it's probably cheating. As we talked, I felt my mood darken. I was shocked myself, but the thought of my daughter, who innocently adores her father, made me even more depressed. Yet I couldn't forgive my husband's dubious behavior. I had no intention of excusing his actions. Depending on how he reacted, I would decide what to do next. After much thought, I decided to confide in my daughter. It was a big shock for her, given her admiration for her father, but her feelings of betrayal were stronger, and her sadness and anger seemed intense. "Mom, I don't know how to take all this about Dad, but I still want to see him. Maybe if we talk face to face, a different side of things might emerge, and we could sort this out. We can't know the whole truth from these photos alone. I really want to know the truth." "Should I come with you?" "No, Mom. If it's you and me, it would feel like 2 against 1 for Dad, which isn't fair, right? And I don't want things to become a mess if you and Dad talk first. I'll talk to him alone first." Dad might find it easier to talk to a child, you know? Plus, originally, I was going to give him the present, right? I want to give it to him in person. My daughter clearly articulated her thoughts. I accepted her proposal and decided to let her go to the apartment alone. And then the day arrived. My daughter and I headed to my husband's work location. Despite usually being talkative, both of us were unusually quiet. When we reached the nearest station to the apartment, my daughter headed to my husband's apartment using her map app. I went to a cafe to meet Kelly and wait for a call from my daughter. When I arrived at the cafe, Kelly had already reserved a seat. Is Sarah okay? Yeah, she was shocked at first, but wants to find out the truth. That's good. She's reliable. Let's wait for her contact here. Kelly and I talked about various things while waiting for my daughter's call. After a while, my mobile phone rang. It was my daughter. Hello, Sarah, what happened? In a trembling voice, she replied, Mom, it's true. When I went to the apartment, that woman from the photos answered the door. But it's weird. Dad's shoes are there, but she insists that Hamilton has gone out and is not available. What should I do? For now, come here. We're at a cafe. Can you come alone? With a weak voice, she just said, Yes, and hung up. Kelly, who'd been silently observing, sighed. So, it was cheating after all. Yeah, confirmed cheating, I said, exhaling deeply. We then began to plan what to do about my husband. Kelly, being experienced, was quite a strategist and came up with a good plan. This should work, right? That's right. We nodded in agreement. Shortly after, my daughter entered the cafe. I beckoned her over. Mom, it's certain now, isn't it? Dad's affair. He must be at home, but won't come out. Maybe he doesn't want to see me anymore. She seemed confused, her face close to tears. That's not it. Probably he was ashamed to face you after his affair was exposed. That's how much you mean to him, Sarah. If I had gone, I might have stormed in, angrily confronting your father. But Sarah, you're kind. I said, patting her head. That woman said Hamilton isn't here, right? Yes, that's what she said. Then why don't we make it so that Hamilton is really not in our lives? I suggested, and my daughter looked puzzled. What do you mean by making him not there? Well, I explained to her the strategy Kelly and I had discussed. She understood and agreed. When we got home, we quickly started preparing to put our plan into action. Let's really make it a family without my husband. Thanks to Kelly's arrangements, we smoothly decided on a place to move to. We used the money my husband had been putting in for living expenses and some money from another bank account I had. He wouldn't expect such a large sum to be withdrawn at once, but since he was at fault, he'll have to accept it. We left only my husband's belongings in the house and secretly moved. It was weeks later when my husband finally contacted us. As soon as I answered the phone, he furiously yelled, Almost all the money in the bank account is gone. What's going on? Ultimately, he could not measure me and my daughter in terms of money. I felt oddly detached. There were some things we needed here. I'm sorry about that. But thanks to you always transferring the living expenses, we were saved. Thank you as always. I feigned ignorance, expressing my thanks as usual, though my heart wasn't in it. Well, if you needed it, that's okay. But next time, consult me in advance, okay? It's shocking to have such a large sum withdrawn suddenly. A man secretly cheating, yet having the nerve to say such things? I felt anger rising within me, but I made sure not to show any of it. Sure, I'll make sure to consult you next time, I said. That's good. I finally have a long weekend coming up, so I'll come home for the first time in a while. Let's talk about various things then, he said, ending the call. Of course he has a lot to talk about, but if he thinks he's in control, he is mistaken. Right, I said mischievously to my daughter. Your dad is coming back this long weekend. Really? Then it's finally time, she said, smiling playfully. I'll be back on the plane, arriving after lunch. A message from my husband appeared on my mobile phone. My daughter and I returned to the house where we used to live as a family of 3 to observe my husband's behavior. The house, now without us, only his belongings remained. The happy memories of the 3 of us were no longer there. "Dad's here," my daughter, peeking outside, exclaimed. We both hid quietly. "I'm home," said my husband, cluelessly entering the house. "What? Why? No luggage. Grace? Sarah? Are you not here?" His bewildered appearance was so funny that both my daughter and I couldn't help but laugh. When we appeared in front of him, we tried to cover up. "What? You were here? Don't scare me like that. Why is the house so tidy? Did you clean up?" "Just tidied up a bit. But why don't you come in first?" I urged him. Entering, he dropped his bag in shock, seeing the orderly living room and kitchen. "What? Why? The cupboard's gone. The TV. But only my stuff is left." He was utterly confused. Watching him flustered was quite amusing. "Hamilton, there's a present for you, right, Sarah?" My daughter nodded and took out a wrapped gift. "Yes, you know, Dad, I went to your apartment on your birthday to give you this present. I bought it with my part-time job money." She held out the wrapped bottle of liquor. "Is that so? Thank you." He awkwardly tried to receive it, but my daughter quickly avoided and moved it back in her bag. His confusion deepened at my daughter's subtle defiance. "That day you were in the room, right? You knew I was coming, so why pretend you didn't?" My daughter glared sharply at him. His expression betrayed his inability to hide. "Some woman answered the door and said you weren't there. What does that mean?" She questioned him calmly, and he couldn't hide his panic. "No, I don't know any woman like that. Maybe?" My husband stuttered, seeing his pathetic appearance. I was utterly disillusioned. "It's impossible you don't know, right? Because she was in your room, and she even mentioned your name, saying Hamilton is not here. Isn't it strange that you claim not to know her?" My daughter continued pressing him, and my husband looked utterly perplexed. "That is, she is someone from work, a work-related person." He tried to make a strained excuse, but my daughter wouldn't let it pass. "Don't lie. Just a work person wouldn't come to a married man's house on a holiday and be alone with him, right? Were you cheating with her, Dad? That's despicable. I can't forgive you." She angrily confronted my husband.
"Cheating? I wouldn't do such a thing. You can't just make me out to be the worst without evidence."
"There is evidence." Now it was my turn. I showed him the photos Kelly had gathered, showing him walking closely with a young woman, smiling affectionately, and entering his apartment with her. There were 3 pieces of data. The 3 pictures clearly showed his involvement with this woman. With these photos and the suspicious behavior of the woman when my daughter visited the apartment, the evidence of his affair was overwhelming.
"What's this? When were these taken?"
My husband's face turned pale. I continued. "Hamilton, Sarah and I believed you were working hard at your solo assignment. Even though you weren't coming home, we thought you were just busy with work, never suspecting anything. Such a terrible betrayal, right? To think you were cheating all this time behind our backs. I'm disappointed in you. So we decided that you are no longer part of our family. We don't need someone like that in our lives anymore. This is how I feel, Hamilton." I handed him the divorce papers I had already filled out my part on. "Just so you know, I will be claiming compensation. Let's discuss the future with our lawyers. Goodbye, Hamilton Miller." "Bye, Dad," my daughter and I said, leaving the house.
"Wait, Grace, Sarah, listen to me."
Left behind, my husband called out pitifully, trying to stop us. But neither my daughter nor I looked back. Afterwards, my husband tried to contact me multiple times, but I ignored all his attempts. Kelly, with her extensive connections, found a good lawyer in my hometown. Thanks to her, the divorce negotiations settled in our favor. It was only natural for us to demand compensation, as his affair was the root cause. Initially resistant, he eventually relented and signed the divorce papers. He probably thought about divorcing after his affair was discovered by our daughter, but our preemptive action threw off his plans. After the divorce due to his affair with a colleague, my husband's reputation at work plummeted, and he lost his prospects for advancement. He became alienated from his coworkers and felt compelled to resign. His subsequent job search didn't go well, and even the woman he had an affair with abandoned him, leaving him in a sorry state. With the compensation payments looming, his future looked difficult. But as he was no longer family, it was no longer our concern. As for my daughter and me, I, who had been a housewife for so long, faced uncertainties about the future. But Kelly provided heartfelt support. She had also been through a divorce. She had struggled with a cheating ex-husband, but she had moved on. As she cheerfully recounted at our reunion, she shared her secrets of recovery with me. My daughter and I now live in a woman-only share house Kelly introduced to us. It's full of people with their own stories. We don't intrude on each other's privacy, but we're there to help when needed. I stayed here after my divorce too. The owner is a friend, so if you need anything, let me know. I want to help as a fellow single mother with a divorce history, Kelly had said with a smile. She planned to return to the share house herself soon. Through the share house community, I found a job at a small publishing company. It was daunting at first, but the teamwork and the small staff was great, and I'm learning and working hard every day. My daughter also finds interacting with women of various ages stimulating, listening to their stories and seeking advice. She's starting to think about her future aspirations. The divorce allowed us to take a new step forward. There's a lot of life ahead of us. My daughter and I plan to live strong and resiliently. Hey, Mom, if you find someone nice, don't worry about me and feel free to remarry, my daughter suddenly said. That's true. It might be nice to fall in love again. And if you find someone nice, introduce him to me first. Of course I'd want you to meet him first. We laughed together, discussing such things. The whiskey, originally meant as a present for her father, we decided to save for a special occasion between mother and daughter. We'll keep it for now,